It started with the smell of roasted garlic and melted butter, the kind of aroma that wraps around your senses. Heavy, rich, warm. It smelled like home. I still remember standing in the doorway of my own kitchen just watching her. The thick steam rising off the stovetop, the quiet, steady hum of the oven, the gentle clatter of a wooden spoon against a cast-iron skillet. She was a stranger, really. Just a girl who saw me breaking stepping out of the rain and decided to cook me back to life. I thought it was a miracle. A genuine, terrifying miracle. I ate every bite. I swallowed every single lie. Now I just lie awake. The digital clock next to my side of the bed reads 3 in the morning. The glow is cold, clinical. It casts long, pale shadows across the bedroom floor. I turn my head just an inch, listening to the soft, rhythmic breathing of the woman beside me, my wife. She looks so peaceful in the dark, so beautifully innocent. But she isn't. She is a phantom, a carefully constructed illusion made of sweet words and savory dishes. They tell you to watch out for the monsters. They warn you about the red flags, the sudden, flashing anger, the shifting eyes, the cold, distant shoulders. What they don't tell you, what no one ever tells you, is that the most dangerous traps in this world don't look like traps at all. They look like a warm fire. They taste like a hearty, simmering meal after a long, freezing day. They look exactly like salvation. I watch her chest rising and falling. I feel nothing but a hollow, freezing dread. Because the woman sleeping next to me, the woman who kissed my open wounds and vowed to hold my heart forever, doesn't actually exist. And the truth of who she really is and what she has done is worse than any nightmare. 3 years ago, my life wasn't just broken. It was vaporized. My business partner, a man I had considered my best friend since childhood, had embezzled everything. He drained the company accounts, forged my signature on a mountain of toxic debt, and vanished. He left me with nothing. Just a cardboard box of office supplies, a ruined credit score, and a suffocating, blinding depression. I lost my house. I moved into a tiny, drafty apartment on the ugly side of the city. I stopped answering my phone. I stopped eating. I just sat on a mattress on the floor, staring at the peeling wallpaper, waiting to simply fade away. And then, the knock on the door. It was a Tuesday night, cold rain lashing against the thin window panes. I dragged myself to the door, fully expecting an eviction notice. Instead, it was her. She stood in the dim, flickering light of the hallway, wearing a damp yellow cardigan, holding a massive, heavy cast-iron pot. "You look like you haven't eaten in a week," she said. Her voice was like soft velvet. I made way too much. She said her name was Alara. She claimed she had just moved into the unit down the hall. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. She just stepped past me, carrying the scent of rosemary slow-roasted beef and butter. It hit my starving senses like a physical blow. She found 2 chipped bowls in my empty cupboards. She poured the stew. I took 1 bite. Just 1. And the dam broke. I wept. I sat on the floor of that pathetic apartment and sobbed into a bowl of beef stew like a lost child. Alara didn't awkwardly look away. She didn't leave. She sat beside me. She put a warm, gentle hand on my back. She became a sudden solid anchor in a violent storm. That night was the beginning of the end. The romance was a whirlwind. It moved with a terrifying, intoxicating speed. Alara became my entire universe. She cooked for me every single evening. Elaborate, beautiful meals, braised short ribs, homemade pastas. She fed my body and slowly she pieced my mind back together. She was mysteriously quiet about her past. She told me she grew up bouncing through the foster care system in another state. She said she had no family, no ties, no friends from childhood. No one in the world but me. I didn't push for details. I didn't care. I just wanted to protect her, just like she had protected me. Within 2 months, she gave up her apartment and moved into mine. Within 4 months, I used the very last of a hidden emergency fund to buy a modest ring. By month 6, We stood in front of a judge at the county courthouse. Just the two of us. I clawed my way back to the land of the living. I worked 3 brutal jobs. I saved every single penny. I eventually managed to buy us a real house. A beautiful 2-story home in a quiet neighborhood. I built a life for her. I gave her everything. And I thought she had given me salvation. When she would smile at me across our new dining table, the candlelight reflecting in her dark eyes, I felt an absolute unconditional safety. A perfect, impenetrable bubble. I didn't know yet that predators don't always show their teeth. Sometimes they show you exactly what you are desperate to see. They mold themselves into the perfect custom-made shape of your deepest vulnerabilities. The trap was set. The door was locked. And I was the one who handed her the key. The honeymoon phase didn't shatter. It dissolved. Slowly, like sugar in hot tea, until nothing was left but a bitter taste at the back of my throat. It started in the 2nd year of our marriage. Small things, disjointed things, things that didn't make sense but were too tiny to start a fight over. A misplaced word, a sudden cold shift in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. I noticed first that Alara was a ghost. I mean that literally. We were sitting on the couch one evening, laptops open. I was trying to find an old recipe she had mentioned. I casually typed her maiden name into the search bar. Alara Vance. Nothing. 0 results. No social media. No old high school track records. No local news clippings. No tagged photos from a forgotten college roommate. In the modern world, being that invisible isn't just unusual. It takes deliberate, exhausting effort. When I asked her about it, she just smiled. That same gentle, perfect smile. She said she hated the internet. She said she left all that behind when she aged out of the foster system. But her stories, they never held water. If I asked about her favorite teacher, or the name of the street she lived on when she was 10, or the color of her first bicycle, she would freeze, just for a fraction of a second. A tiny microscopic pause. And then she would pivot. She would change the subject by touching my arm, or kissing my cheek, or bringing up dinner. Deflection through affection. It worked. For a while. But then, there was the box. It was made of dark, heavy walnut, bound in tarnished brass. She kept it pushed all the way to the back of the top shelf in our master closet. I only saw it once when we were moving into the house. I reached for it just to carry it inside. Her hand snapped out. Her fingers dug into my wrist. Hard. Her nails practically pierced my skin. "Don't," she said. Her voice wasn't velvet anymore. It was iron. "That is mine. Never touch it." She immediately softened. She apologized. She blamed it on trauma. She said it held a few painful tokens from her mother. But the rule remained. The box was locked. The key was always around her neck, hidden beneath her shirt. A constant metal reminder of a boundary I was never allowed to cross. And then, winter came. It was a brutal December, the kind of cold that bites right through your bones. Ice coated the windows. The wind howled through the bare trees. I woke up one night at 2 a.m. The bed beside me was empty. The sheets were cold. I got up. I walked silently down the carpeted hallway. I didn't call out for her. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. The primitive part of my brain whispering to stay quiet. To hunt. I saw her through the kitchen window. She was standing on the back patio. In the dead of winter. Wearing nothing but a thin silk robe. Barefoot on the frost-covered wood. She was on her phone. She wasn't talking. She was listening. The phone was pressed hard against her ear. Her posture was rigid, tense, like a coiled spring. I watched her for 5 whole minutes, the freezing wind whipping her hair across her face. She didn't shiver. She didn't move. Finally, she spoke. Just 2 words, into the receiver. "Not yet." She hung up. She turned around. I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway before she could see me through the glass. I crawled back into bed. I pulled the heavy duvet up to my chin, but I couldn't get warm. The cold had seeped inside of me. When she slid back beneath the covers, she felt like ice. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, the rhythm of my heart pounding, a steady, terrified drumbeat against my ribs. Who was she talking to at 2 a.m, in the freezing cold? Not yet. Not yet. What? The house was perfectly quiet. The smell of the dinner she had cooked hours ago, roasted chicken and thyme, still lingered in the air. But it didn't smell like home anymore. It smelled like bait. I was sharing a bed with a stranger. And the terrifying realization was beginning to set in. The woman who saved my life might just be waiting for the perfect moment to end it. It doesn't kill you all at once. It doesn't announce its arrival. It just breeds. It lays its eggs in your quietest moments, in the empty spaces between words, in the lingering heavy silence after a door clicks shut. I felt sick, physically, violently ill. Ilara had saved me from the gutter. She had pulled me out of the darkest, coldest hole of my life. And how was I repaying her? With suspicion, with creeping through my own home like a thief. The guilt was heavy. It sat on my chest like a stone pressing the air out of my lungs. But the gut feeling, the primal screaming instinct deep in my belly, was heavier. I became an actor in my own life. Every evening I would walk through the front door. I would smell the roasted garlic, the searing meats, the rich simmering sauces. I would take off my coat. I would force a smile. I would kiss her cheek. I would sit at the dining room table. And I would force myself to swallow, bite by bite, pretending the food tasted like love, when really, it tasted like ash. My heart would hammer against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird beating its wings against a cage. I watched her hands. I watched her eyes, looking for the slip, the tiny crack in the perfect porcelain mask. I had to know. I couldn't survive the not knowing. I started small. I checked her car. She had told me for months that she volunteered at a local animal shelter on Tuesdays and Thursdays. A noble, selfless thing to do. It fit her perfectly. So one Wednesday night, while she was taking a long hot bath, I slipped out into the garage. The concrete floor was freezing against my bare feet. I opened her car door. The interior dome light felt as bright as a police spotlight. My hands were shaking, slipping with cold sweat. I accessed the internal navigation system. I scrolled through the recent destinations. There was no animal shelter, no dog parks, no vet clinics, just an address. An upscale hotel bar on the other side of the city, 30 miles away, and a nondescript high-end corporate office building downtown. Both visited repeatedly, regularly, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Why lie about something so small, unless it wasn't small at all? I realized I was out of my depth. I was a man who had already been destroyed by a blind spot once. My former business partner had ruined me because I trusted him blindly. I wasn't going to let it happen again. Not this time. I took a half day off work. I drove 3 towns over, making absolutely sure I wasn't being followed. I walked into the cramped, stale-smelling office of a private investigator. An older man with tired, heavy eyes. His office smelled like old paper and cheap coffee. I slid a thick manila envelope across his scratched wooden desk. Inside was a clear photograph of Ilara, and the name she gave me, Ilara Vance. I gave him the addresses from the GPS, and I handed him a cash retainer fee that made my stomach drop. Find out who she is, I told him. My voice sounded hollow. Find out who she really is. The next 2 weeks were pure, unadulterated torture. I was living a double life, sleeping next to a woman who felt more and more like a loaded weapon. Every time her phone buzzed against the kitchen counter, my breath caught. Every time she unlocked the front door, I braced myself for impact. At night, I would lie awake staring at her chest as it rose and fell in the dark. My eyes would drift to the silver chain around her neck. The key. The key to that heavy wooden box hidden in the back of our closet. I wanted to rip it off her throat. I wanted to tear that box open and spill her secrets onto the bedroom floor. But I couldn't. Not yet. I had to play the game. And the dinners. Oh God, the dinners. They became elaborate, agonizing rituals. One night she made a slow-cooked beef bourguignon, her absolute masterpiece. The very dish that had won my broken heart back in that freezing apartment. She even served it in those same chipped bowls. A romantic callback, a sweet, nostalgic gesture. She smiled at me, her dark eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. "Eat up, darling," she said. Her voice was soft, so perfectly, flawlessly sweet. "You look exhausted." I looked down at the rich, dark broth, the tender meat. I picked up my silver spoon. My hand was trembling, just slightly. I tightened my grip, praying she didn't notice. I lifted the spoon to my mouth. I chewed. I swallowed the lie. I smiled back. "It's delicious," I said. The words felt like broken glass in my throat. 2 days later, my phone rang. An unknown number. I stepped out of my office and locked the heavy wooden door behind me. I pressed the phone to my ear. "I have it," the private investigator said. His voice was grim, heavy. "I have the file, but you need to come down here. You need to see this in person. Alara Vance doesn't exist, but the woman living in your house, she's been very, very busy." The floor beneath me seemed to vanish. The free fall had begun. The drive to the investigator's office was a blur. Just a long gray tunnel of dread. The windshield wipers beat a steady, frantic rhythm against the glass. Swish, thump, swish, thump. It sounded like a countdown. I parked in the alley. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs. My legs felt like lead. Every step was a battle against my own instinct to run away, to go back to the lie. The lie was warm. The lie smelled like roasted garlic and fresh bread. But the truth was waiting for me behind a frosted glass door. I pushed it open. The investigator didn't greet me. He didn't offer me coffee. He just sat behind his scratched desk. He looked at me with a profound, heavy pity, the kind of look you give a dying man. He pushed a thick, heavy manila folder across the wood. It stopped right at the edge of the desk. "Sit down," he said. "Don't open it until you're sitting." I sat. The leather chair groaned. I reached out. My fingers felt numb. I flipped the heavy cardboard cover open. The first thing I saw was a timeline. A printed spreadsheet. Dates, locations, names. So many names. "Alara Vance doesn't exist," the investigator said. His voice was a low rumble in the quiet room. "Her real name is Elena Rostova. Or maybe it's Claire Bennett. Or maybe Sarah Jenkins. She changes her name like most people change their coats. She has no foster care record, no tragic childhood. She's a ghost because she wants to be. She's a professional." A professional, what I thought, but my mouth couldn't form the words. I turned the page. It was a copy of the lease agreement for that terrible, drafty apartment building. The place where we met. The place where I was starving on a mattress on the floor. "Look at the date," he told me. I looked. She signed the lease for the unit down the hall exactly 3 days after I moved in. She didn't happen to live there. She followed me there. "She tracked you," the investigator said softly. "She waited for you to hit absolute rock bottom. And then she knocked on your door with a pot of stew. It was a play, a calculated surgical strike. She knew exactly what you needed to see." My stomach violently twisted. The room started to spin. The memory of her wiping my tears, holding me while I sobbed into that bowl of food. It turned toxic. It wasn't love. It was data collection. It was a predator testing the vulnerability of its prey. But why? Why me? I had nothing. I was bankrupt, destroyed. I turned to the 3rd page, and the floor completely fell out from beneath me. It was a photograph, black and white, grainy but clear enough. It was taken outside a high-end downtown bank. 2 people were standing on the sidewalk, laughing, sharing a cigarette. One of them was my wife. Ilara, or Elena, or whoever she was. The other person was Marcus. Marcus, my former business partner, the man I'd known since childhood, the man who had forged my signature, drained our company accounts, and left me with a mountain of toxic debt. The man who had ruined my life. They were standing close, intimate. His hand was resting on her lower back. A sharp physical pain shot through my chest. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't pull air into my lungs. I gasped. I gripped the edges of the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. "Breathe," the investigator commanded. "Just breathe. Look at the bank records." I forced my eyes down to the next page. Highlighted bank statements, wire transfers, offshore accounts. Marcus hadn't acted alone. He wasn't smart enough to hide the money so flawlessly. He had help. He had Ilara. She was the architect. She set up the shell companies. She routed the stolen funds. They had split the money, my money, the money I had bled for. "She destroyed you," the investigator said. The words fell like hammer blows. "She orchestrated your ruin, but she realized they made a mistake. They missed something." I stared blindly at the papers. "Missed what?" I whispered. "Your grandfather's trust," he replied. "The one that unlocks when you turn 35. Marcus didn't know about it, but she found out. After the fact, she realized there was still meat left on the bone." The horrifying reality snapped into perfect, agonizing focus. She hadn't come to save me. She came back to finish the job. She couldn't access the trust as a stranger, but as my wife. As my loving, devoted, legally bound spouse, she would have a front row seat. She was just waiting, feeding me, smiling at me, playing the perfect doting angel until the calendar flipped to my 35th birthday, 3 months from now. Those late-night phone calls, the investigator asked, the hotel bars she's meeting with Marcus. They're still together. They're waiting for the payout. You aren't a husband to her. You're a piggy bank. And when that trust opens, she will empty it, and you will likely have a very tragic, very fatal accident shortly after. I closed the folder. The silence in the office was deafening. I thought about the dinners, the hundreds of meals she had cooked for me, the roasted chickens, the braised beef, the rich, heavy sauces. I thought about how much she insisted I eat, how she watched me swallow every bite with that soft, loving smile. I wasn't being nourished. I was being fattened up, like livestock. I stood up. My legs were no longer lead. They were wired with a cold, terrifying electricity. The devastation was gone, burned away in a fraction of a second, replaced by something else entirely, something cold and dark and incredibly focused. "Thank you," I told the investigator. I took the folder. I turned toward the door. I didn't want to cry anymore. I didn't want to hide. I wanted to go home. I was going to sit at my dining room table. I was going to let her serve me one last meal. And then I was going to burn her perfect, beautiful illusion straight to the ground. The drive home was different. The fear was gone. It had been burned away completely, replaced by ice, pure, freezing ice in my veins. I didn't confront her immediately. I couldn't. I had to secure the perimeter. I was in a war zone, and my enemy was sleeping in my bed. For 3 agonizing weeks, I lived with a monster. I smiled. I kissed her cheek. I ate her food. It took every ounce of strength in my body not to vomit every time her hand touched mine. The psychological toll was unbearable. I was a hostage in my own home. During dinner, the smell of her cooking, the rich, buttery aromas, literally made my throat close up. I had to force the food down, suppressing my gag reflex, while smiling at the woman who was quietly planning my funeral. Behind her back, I moved with absolute surgical precision. I hired the most ruthless asset protection lawyer in the state. We quietly locked down my grandfather's trust. We moved accounts. We built an ironclad fortress around what was mine. I filed for a silent, immediate divorce under seal citing massive financial fraud. The paperwork was ready. The police were put on standby, holding the thick file of embezzlement evidence on Marcus and his ghost of an accomplice. Then came the final night, a Tuesday, raining, cold, exactly like the night we met. I walked through the front door. The house smelled like rosemary and roasted garlic, beef bourguignon, her absolute masterpiece. The very meal she used to reel me in. She greeted me in the hallway, wearing that same gentle, perfect smile. "Rough day?" she asked. "You have no idea," I replied. I sat at the dining room table. The lighting was low. The candles flickered, casting long dancing shadows across the walls. She set the heavy cast iron pot in the center of the table. She ladled the rich, dark stew into our bowls. She sat across from me. She picked up her silver spoon. I didn't move. I just watched her. The silence stretched. 1 minute, then 2. The only sound in the house was the rain lashing against the window pane, and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The scrape of her spoon against the ceramic bowl echoed like a gunshot. She took a bite. She looked up. Her brow furrowed, just slightly. "Aren't you going to eat, darling?" she asked. Her voice was velvet, sweet, so deeply concerned. I reached into my suit pocket. Slowly, deliberately. I pulled out a single, thick, glossy photograph. A black and white image from outside the bank. The one of her and Marcus standing intimately on the sidewalk. I didn't say a word. I just placed my index finger on the center of the photo, and I slid it across the smooth, polished wood of the dining table. It stopped right next to her bowl. I watched her eyes. I wanted to see it. I needed to see the exact moment the illusion shattered. She looked down. The silence in the room became absolute. It was a physical weight, crushing the air out of the space between us. Her eyes locked onto the image. Her breath stopped. Her shoulders froze. For 10 excruciating seconds, neither of us blinked. And then, it happened. The mask slipped. It didn't fall off dramatically. It just melted away. The soft, loving warmth in her dark eyes vanished, erased, replaced by something entirely different. Something cold, dead, reptilian. The sweet, concerned wife was gone. The professional predator was finally looking at me. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't deny a single thing. She slowly reached out. She picked up the photograph. She studied it for a moment. Then she set it face down on the table. She picked up her white linen napkin. She dabbed the corners of her mouth. Her movements were slow, calculated, completely terrifyingly devoid of emotion. "When did you find out?" she asked. Her voice wasn't velvet anymore. It was flat, metallic. It sent a freezing shiver straight down my spine. 3 weeks ago, I said. My voice was steady, colder than hers. "The trust is locked, Elena. The money is gone. The lawyer filed the papers this morning, and the investigator's file, the wire transfers the shell company's all of it, was handed over to the district attorney 2 hours ago." She didn't flinch. She just stared at me, assessing the damage, calculating her next move. "Marcus always was sloppy," she murmured, almost to herself. She slowly stood up. She didn't look angry. She didn't look scared. She looked mildly inconvenienced, like a chess player who just realized they lost a piece. She reached up to her pale neck. She unclasped the silver chain. She pulled a small brass key over her head. She dropped it onto the table. It landed with a sharp, heavy clink next to the photograph. "For the box in the closet," she said. "Keep it. It's just old passports anyway." She walked out of the dining room. Her footsteps were light, silent on the hardwood floor. I heard the front closet open. I heard the rustle of her wool coat, the click of the front door unlocking. She didn't pack a bag. She didn't ask for a second chance. She didn't even look back. The heavy door closed behind her, a soft, final thud. I sat alone in the dining room. The candles burned down. The stew grew cold in the bowl, a thick, greasy layer of fat congealing on the surface. I had won. I kept my money. I saved my life. But as I sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me, listening to the rain, I realized something horrifying. I was completely, utterly hollow. The police picked up Marcus 3 days later. He was trying to board a one-way flight to Costa Rica. He cried when they cuffed him in the terminal, a pathetic, whimpering mess. But Elena or Ilara, or whoever she really was, she vanished, like smoke in a hurricane. By the time the district attorney moved to freeze her known accounts, they were already empty. The heavy wooden box in our master closet held exactly what she said it did. 5 different passports, 5 different faces, 5 different names, all completely fake. The divorce was finalized in absentia. It was a clean clinical procedure, just black ink on white paper. I kept the house. I kept my grandfather's trust. I kept my life. But it doesn't feel like a victory. It feels like waking up in a graveyard. The trauma didn't leave when she walked out the front door. It stayed behind. It seeped into the floorboards of this massive empty house. It soaked into the drywall. I can't stand the kitchen anymore. I haven't turned on the stove since that terrible night. The smell of roasted garlic, the scent of butter melting in a hot pan. It doesn't make my mouth water. It makes my stomach violently heave. It smells like pure, concentrated betrayal. It smells like poison. I eat cold takeout now, out of cheap cardboard boxes standing over the stainless steel sink. I eat in complete suffocating silence because the dining room table is a crime scene. She didn't just try to steal my inheritance. She stole my capacity to ever trust another human being. She took the most beautiful, vulnerable thing a person can offer, the desperate, broken need for comfort, and she weaponized it against me. They say time heals all wounds. But some wounds don't heal. They just harden into armor. The lesson I learned, the brutal truth that cost me my sanity, is that true evil rarely looks like a monster. The devil doesn't arrive with horns and hellfire. The devil arrives carrying a warm blanket and a simmering bowl of your favorite food. The devil arrives looking exactly like your ultimate salvation. So I have to ask you, all of you listening out there, what do you do when the person who pulled you out of the darkest hole was actually the one digging your grave? How do you ever trust a kind gesture again? Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you loved unconditionally and suddenly realized you were staring at a complete stranger? Tell me your stories down in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you found yourself holding your breath during this story, if you understand the quiet, terrifying reality of a broken trust, please take a second to leave a like and subscribe to the Betrayal Files. Because the truth is, we all have a story hiding in the dark.